So Steve, there's so much turmoil in the business of publishing and all that. What do you think is the future of business journalism?
Well, if journalism has a future, and I think it does, then surely business journalism has a future. Business is a very, very important, one of the five probably most critical things to cover for any kind of news organization, whether it's print, broadcast, interactive. So business journalism is going to be with us in one shape or form.
Do you think it's changing? You know, I've been reading, as we all have, about all these daily newspapers which have canned their business departments and their sections, folding it in, using only wire copy. Are you worried about that, or are there offsetting factors taking place?
Both. I'm worried about it, and there are offsetting factors. The offsetting factors are slow coming into play. So in the meantime, we're seeing a degradation of some of the business coverage around the country. The fact that a major newspaper like the Washington Post has put its business section into its main section, to me, was very worrisome, because it does de-emphasize their coverage, which is good coverage. But at the same time, there are other outlets for business journalists, websites, different delivery platforms. You'll be able to get stories in different formats on your cell phone, on your e-reader, on iPads, whatever the format is. There are new opportunities to do business journalism, and they can enhance business journalism. For example, with animated graphics can come into play on a screen in a way they can't in print. Video can replace still photography in a newspaper or magazine. So there are a lot of enhancements that can go on because of the new technologies. But I think the fact that there are so many more outlets now is very, very positive. It's just that it's going to take a long time for them to develop audiences and a business model to sustain them. The problem in business journalism, indeed all of journalism, isn't about journalism per se. There's a lot of very good journalism still being done by mainstream media and by new media. The problem is a business model to support quality journalism as we go forward, because the business model for traditional media is eroding.
Those who are worried about that say, well, it's going to erode the traditional quality of journalism, because since we can't get paid for it and everybody's cutting back, there won't be good reporting, citizens journalism won't really replace us, the new entrants aren't as good as the traditional people doing this kind of journalism. What do you think about that? Are the verities, as you like to say, of journalism really endangered?
I really don't think so, because I think that the new ways of doing journalism offer new opportunities. I don't think it's a bad thing that what people who were formerly called the audience can now participate in journalism and make it a two-way conversation. I think that adds to journalistic credibility, and I think there's a lot of knowledge, you know, in communities, in business communities, in local communities, and if we can harness those people to participate in journalism, we can end up with more rather than less.
You know, that the mantra here at the J School is that we train people to do it all. They have to be good in print, we teach them to be good in broadcast. There's a big emphasis on being good online. Well, most of the people watching this video are traditional print reporters, and I think they're saying to themselves, oh my God, am I going to be able to compete, and how can I get these new skills? What do you say to them?
I say, first of all, get the new skills. It's fine to be a long-form magazine writer, a business writer. That's great, and there's going to be a need for it, but probably less of a need than there has been up until now. You've got to learn the new skills. You've got to be able to report in different media formats, on different media platforms, because that's where the audience is going. So if you think, oh, well, I'm a very skilled reporter and writer, and I've done it for 25 years, and that'll get me by, you're making a big mistake.
Do you have any tips for them on how? It's not so easy to figure out how.
Well, I mean, schools like ours, like the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism, do offer continuing education for journalists who want to upgrade their skills. This is not a new problem. In every field, whether it's in medicine or law, or science, people go back to school to get training all the time. There are mid-career programs in business journalism. There are continuing education courses at almost every university in the country. There are ways to upgrade your skills. So I don't accept that it can't be done. It's all about the will to do it.
So, Steve, you were recently a consultant to Bloomberg on the acquisition of your former publication, Business Week. You know, given what's going on, you really see a role for a weekly print product in the world going forward?
Yes, I do. First of all, I'm delighted that Bloomberg is the new owner of Business Week because they have the deep pockets and resources to make a real go of it. Not just to have Business Week survive, that's not the issue, but to have Business Week thrive. Yes, I think there's room for a very, very good print weekly magazine, in conjunction with a website to be sure, because you can't have one and not the other. But I think there's a place for an interpretive, analytic magazine that does enterprising journalism, stories that you can't get anywhere else, trend stories, narrative stories, investigative stories. These are all the things that Business Week at its best can do and will do. So I'm very hopeful, and I think there is a place for it. Quality journalism is a necessary but not sufficient condition for success in today's world. In other words, you have to be very, very good in order to have any chance. If you're not good, you're dead. But if you are good, you have a chance. It's the price of entry, and I think there's room for one weekly business magazine, absolutely, as long as they do it really well.
So, speaking of investigative work, how do you evaluate the work of business journalists in the run-up to the financial crisis and the Great Recession? And how do you evaluate it during the crisis and the Great Recession? And are there any lessons that you've drawn?
The first lesson I've drawn is that really terrific leading edge journalism is very difficult in business reporting or any other form of journalism, whether it's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq or financial crisis on Wall Street or Ponzi schemes. It's very, very difficult to see this stuff coming. I would say in the case of the run-up to the financial crisis, we can all find stories that really laid out problems of subprime loans and the conflicts of interests of rating agencies, the excessive leverage on Wall Street. There were plenty of stories about that, but they were few and far between in the overall massive coverage of a stock market bubble. And is it fair to say that the press didn't really blow the whistle? Yeah, that's a fair comment, but neither did the Federal Reserve, neither did the rating agencies, neither did the United States Treasury, neither did the SEC. So the media, the failure, if that's what it is just part of the story. I think since the collapse happened, I think the coverage has really been quite good. And I mean all the coverage. I mean coverage on websites and newspapers and magazines, broadcast, even books. There have been any number of really good books written about this crisis. So I think once we knew what was going on, the coverage was really very good and continues to be good. I think the real failure right now is not a failure of the press. I think the real failure is in Washington, the failure to come up with appropriate financial regulation. We still haven't done it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.